I do want to begin the second half with the Aldermen, beginning with Marshall. And the question is, how do you feel that City Administrator Cathy Stepp has performed?
Spicy.
I like this one. First off, I would like to recognize Miss Cathy Stepp. She is here today. Myself and Ralph and Ruth really put our neck out in line to hire Cathy. And it's the best decision, one of the best decisions that I've ever made. She has done such a tremendous job at City Hall of completely changing the culture of some of the things that had to be fixed. And I think the best way to check me on that is to talk to our city directors. They laud Cathy for her leadership and her ability to keep us focused and keep us moving, as Ralph said, at the speed of business. And I do want to just say, there's been a lot made about this. If you hear from anyone that our directors are less than satisfied, it's just a falsehood, because they are all so thrilled with how our city is operating, and have personally come up to me and said that Cathy is one of the best city administrators this town has ever had. So.
Yeah, I have to agree with the assessment from Marshall. Everything I've heard, everything I've seen, I think Cathy's doing an outstanding job as our city administrator. I recently had a chance, I'm in our local Rotary Club, and I recently had a chance to meet with our Parks Department, because our Rotary Club is going to be sponsoring a park here in town, helping with the maintenance of it and so on. And it was great to hear directly from our city employees how excited they are by the way our city is operating today. I've heard similar from comments made by our fire chief as well, that things are going extraordinarily well in the city. Now, there's always going to be things we can improve. There's always going to be things we want to do better. But I think from where we are, from where we were to where we are today, it's a world of improvement. It's an exciting city to be living in and enjoying the benefits of that. And I think we have a lot of good things to look forward as we take on the next year or two in the city.
Josh, could you repeat the question?
The question is, how do you feel that City Administrator Cathy Stepp has performed?
Well, I had the great fortune of being on the HR committee, and so I got to see the long-form interviews of a lot of the applicants. And you know, if you just put applications down and you looked at just the paper, there were probably people that, from a city administrator position, looked better. But when you interacted with these people through the manners that we did, i.e. video and things like that, there was something about Cathy that just really stood out. Not only her ability to lead organizations, great, gigantic organizations with huge budgets, but she just had this like comfort appeal about her. Almost like, I would like to say almost like a motherly appeal, but like you just knew there was something about her like you couldn't fluster, like almost like no matter what you threw at her, she could handle. And that was my initial feeling. And we hired her. And it happened. What happened? And the first 45 days were like a torch, really, at City Hall. I mean, most of you have seen it. I mean, there were directors leaving, there were things going on, and my instinct of Cathy's ability to stay cool under pressure came to pass. She held steadfast in her position. She communicated with this board exactly what was going on, and it gave us the best level of information that we could make the hard decisions that we had to make. And I can tell you, a lot of them were very hard. So when I think about like what her job performance has been like, it has exceeded my expectation. I mean, just on so many levels. She's a great human being, but as each of these gentlemen mentioned, these directors and even the people that are emptying your trash cans around town have stopped me and just accoladed the leadership that's in place and how much happier they are to go to work for you. When Marshall and I kind of worked together on our initial campaign 2 years ago, I almost made him promise me that what we were doing, we could make a difference. Remember that conversation? And I could tell you with great expectation and even more hope for the future that Cathy's hiring has made that difference. And our city is in a better place, not just today, but even 5 and 10 and 15 years down the road is in a better place because of her leadership and what she's been able to do in reconnecting these leaders and these directors to kind of pull down the walls and share not just the day-to-day operation, but and these guys are sharing each other's heart with each other, and that makes our city a stronger, better, happier place to be. And that's what I see in this community, and that's what's happening because of Cathy Stepp.
Glenn, our next question begins with you. Would you like to see any changes to improve the current city administration / city hall?
Well, I think we kind of covered a lot of that ground just a second ago. I think there's always room for improvement, and having run many businesses that are arguably larger than the size of Branson, you always want to strive for improvement. You always want to be better. It's great. The progress, like our two aldermen have said, the progress in the last couple of years in the city are fantastic. We can thank Cathy, we can thank the mayor, we can thank the aldermen for staying on track with that. I think the danger is we sit back and we get comfortable in that chair, right? And we can say, wow, a lot of things are going great, let's just keep doing that. That's not the right answer. We've got to continually raise the bar throughout the organization to say, how can we be better? And we've got to put that burden on Cathy, who has to put it on our directors to say, how can we operate this city even better than we are today? So some of the things I'd like to see that I haven't seen a lot of at this point is I'd like to see some firm metrics that come out of our city administration. We would often in business call them key performance indicators or KPIs that track how are we doing on the key things that we're concerned about. Are we getting better? We've heard the speed of business, that we're open for business. Let's put some measurements in place that say, where are we today, where do we want to be, and let's review that at the city council meetings on a regular basis to say, are we seeing the progress that we want to see? Are we raising the bar? Are we getting better as an organization? And let the community see that as well, so that everybody has an understanding, what are we focusing on, what are we trying to get better on, where do we have a lot of work to do yet. But with that being said, I think we're doing great where we are today. We've now got to start the stretching exercises to get even better as a city government.
So Glenn, I'm glad you brought that up, because you won't have to worry about hearing it on a monthly or weekly basis. That level of transparency is going to be available to you on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. In fact, it'll be available to you real time. So we're talking like moment to moment. That's the leadership that we put in place. We didn't want to just put someone in place that was status quo. We wanted to put an innovator, a creator, someone that thinks outside of the confines of what was just kind of the norm. We didn't want someone that was going to sit back and just occupy a space. We wanted someone that was going to go to work. We wanted someone that's going to put boots on the ground and put things in action. That's what Cathy's been able to do. And she has been able to execute the vision that this board and the mayor have had. I mean, even quicker than us sometimes. Like she brings us ideas. We bring her ideas. We are doing those very things. We inherited a city that wasn't in a bad place, just wasn't in a great place. We had a lot of things that were kind of scattered. We had to reorganize those things. Those things have happened. So to see those KPI, those metrics, those visibility things, you're right, those are things that should have been in place. But because of Cathy's leadership and the directors that we have, we're now putting those things in place. They do take some time to come online, but you're starting to see those things happen already. And they're front facing, they're on our city website. They're where everyone can see them. This is, I mean, this is us just ripping down the curtain, opening the doors, and giving you the day-to-day. You'll be able to see what's happening in accounting. You'll be able to see what we paid yesterday. You can see those things real time. Those things are happening, and so that transparency is happening. So when we talk about what can we continue to improve upon, you know, as an alderman, I want to lean on you as a resident of this community. Bring me your ideas so I can bring them to Cathy. Bring me your ideas so I can bring them to the rest of the board. We can't do this alone. You guys vote for us and we represent you, but we need your input. I do the very best that I can to bring thinkers in the community to the forefront to come up with ideas to solve the issues that we see in our city, whether it's dealing with panhandlers or our homeless population, all of those things. Like, we are constantly, every day, vigorously thinking about those things. Those are the things we want to improve upon. We want to improve upon your quality of life. We want to improve upon the quality of life of your children, things that we're doing with Parks and Rec, the baseball fields. I mean, just amazing. You know, it's putting Branson on a different level as a community, but as a leader in our country, we want to attract people that fit our family values, and that's exactly what we're doing. So yes, there's always room for improvement, and you know, we're thinking as big as we can. You know, what's that? You know, shoot for the stars. If you hit the moon, that's good. No, we want to hit stars, and not just Clay Cooper. We want to hit big stars. No, I'm just kidding.
So another person that I want to give a shout out to is Cathy's Chief of Staff, Alex Gerard. And so when we talk about city administration, it's essentially those two are the core of what city administration is. When Cathy moved to this community a few years back, I got a chance to know her and learn a little bit about her resume. But I also sort of said that when we were hiring Cathy that she's not my cousin and I didn't know her for 20 years, you know. We were working partners first, and then now we've become dear friends. Because of that, I've taken it as a really strong guiding post to have those challenging conversations when we need to have those conversations. I'll give you a great example. The issues that have been worked out with our local Chamber of Commerce. Cathy's leadership on that was just incredible. And often it came from the chirping that came from the Board of Aldermen, because we had very principled stances that we wanted to see with the marketing of our city and how to move forward. And Cathy not only initiated a change with that, but she did so with a smile on her face as a master of PR, and has maintained and even rebuilt some of the relationships that we had with those other community leaders, while at the same time we didn't have to forsake our values. And having both of those is something that I think Cathy just should be lauded for immensely. So yeah, I think there's always communication that can be improved. There's always things that can be improved. I'm a college football fan, Josh, and I think when you're that way, you look at your coach and you say, it doesn't matter if the old coach jettisoned off and left you with whatever you left you with, you need to look at where you're at now. Another thing that we've talked about for many, many years is there was a pervasive rumor and talking point that it was very difficult to do business in the city of Branson. And we are working diligently, night and day, to improve that, to make ourselves more citizen-focused, pro-business at City Hall. And there have been moves that Cathy has made that are just incredible, and takes the courage and the ability to be a fighter, because she sits beside Larry Milton, who's our mayor. Many people know that at one point I was running for mayor and I ended up pulling out of the race and endorsing Larry, and I wouldn't have done that had he not been a fighter. So the only last thing I'll say is if the election goes the way we think it's going to go, you'll have all Republicans on the board. And being that, sometimes you have the issues of a supermajority, you know. And so I think communication amongst the board, communication with the board and the city administration is crucial, and obviously communication between the board and the public. And so those are things that I will continue to work on, and I think, quite frankly, I can be better in my second term. Just getting used to carrying around 2 cell phones because you have a city cell phone is something that it takes growing, but is something that I think that in a second term, I think both Ralph and I are really committed to being great communicators and getting all the information that we need to be stewards of this community, which is what we're tasked with being.
Thank you very much. For the school board candidates, Jason, we'll begin with you. This question, I will say, has a whole bunch of lead up and then a very simple question at the end. Okay, but I'm going to give you the whole thing as it was given to us. We've seen countless examples across the country of parents, students, grandparents, and even pastors showing up to school board meetings, reading excerpts from books found in school libraries that are so sexually explicit and oftentimes pornographic that they are forbidden to continue reading aloud during the meeting. Yet they are told the books will not be removed, as that would constitute quote-unquote book banning, and the librarian is the only one who has the authority over the books. Now we get to the question. By what standards do you believe the books in our library should be judged? And is there a possibility that new books could be read and reviewed by a board of parents or grandparents before they are placed in the library?
Well, I don't know about that question at this point, but I'm rethinking my school board position because as much as Cathy is praised over here, you got a position underneath Cathy, that might go work for you. This is incredible. No, commend you, Cathy. It's incredible work what you're doing. Like Cole mentioned earlier, Branson School Board, I believe, is on the defense a little bit, if you will, in a country and statewide perspective. I am not personally in the libraries at our school. I don't go through and read every book, but I have never once heard, out of all of the times that I've spent at school, of situations in regards to pornographic books in the school system. I believe, again, that we're in this incredible place called Branson, Missouri, in southwest Missouri, that we put up roadblocks for that kind of thing in our school system. I don't believe that ever should be a situation where we have that kind of material for our kids to read. I mean, my gosh, social media is hard enough. We've got a 13-year-old who just got a phone last year, and we have all kinds of blocks on it. We have all kinds of parameters and time limits, and she's on our same iCloud account, if you know what an iCloud account is, okay? We're not on a cloud, it's technology stuff. So we have the same iCloud account, we know exactly what she's looking at, what she's doing. It starts like Alex said, at home with the parents. Make sure that you're aware of what our kids are doing, of what they're seeing, what they're talking about, so that we can have those conversations at home with our family. The school system actually had a really cool thing before COVID happened. It was called the Watchdog Program. I'm sure Cole has been a part of that with his kids, but once every week, a male figure can come into the school. Obviously you're vetted. Most of the time it's a parental guardian or a father or a grandfather. And you get a chance to the entire day just be the watchdog of the school system, of the school facility that you're at. And so I volunteer for that almost every other week because I just enjoy being in the school, being a male figure for the kids that are at the school. You can spend time in your child's classroom. You actually had a schedule where you go to other classrooms and sit in. If a kiddo had some problem with math or with reading or with science or whatever it was, you can go in the hallway and help them with that. You spent time in the lunchroom, just having conversations with every lunch group that came through. You were on the playground playing with kids, and I think it was just great to have that male role model in the school system. And I hope that the school system can bring that watchdog program back because I think it was just so crucial. But to go back to your question, there's no place for that. That's silly.
I know there's not been much mudslinging up here, but I feel like I should point out that I heard a story once about the Great Dad's Breakfast or something along those lines, where Jason here showed up and walked in and didn't realize that you're supposed to bring your kid with you to the Great Dad Breakfast. So he made an emergency call to Desta and said, "Hey, bring the kids! I'm the only dad here without a kid." I just had to come back. So what's funny about service on the school board, I had people early on, friends who live up in Springfield and Ozark area, say, have you hit your head? Why would you subject yourself to being a part of that circus of being on a school board? And truly, there's never been a circus-like moment in my experience in the school board. So why is that? Like, are we just rubber stamping everything that comes across and nobody's paying attention, or what? No, it is the like-mindedness of the school district from top to bottom. So when you have an educator that reflects our values, an administrator, a principal, a superintendent, school board, we don't have to have parents come and yell at the school board, because we're all on the same page. We're operating on the same page. Now, not to say that we're perfect or that things can't get missed, but the committee that chooses books to be added to the library is step number one. There's a filtering process to get a book approved to be added to the library. And if ever a parent has a concern about a book in the library or a book that's been assigned, I've heard tell of it once during my 6 years, on the school board, that there was a concern about I think it was a political ideology that was a point of view in this book. They weren't comfortable with their high school student having this as part of their assignment. The parent wasn't. And so this never rose to school board level. We became aware of it and asked, and it had already been handled. So the administrators review the content of the book and come up with the next step solution. Is it appropriate? Does it meet our curriculum? Is it acceptable for classroom use? And if the parent objects to it, that's okay. Let's offer an alternate assignment. So that's a very basic response to a book that a parent has an objection to. If it rises to the next level, that snuck through and that's not appropriate content, there's a committee that reviews the book. Again, these are all people that you respect and are members of our community that share our values. And so there's a multi-step process to review any book that's considered objectionable. And no high-level concern has ever made it to the school board. And that applies to most every concern. My experience is, I have a concern about this and I'm afraid that this is happening. Okay, well, have you talked to your student's teacher? Well, no, I haven't spoken. Or, occasionally, I spoke to the teacher and I wasn't satisfied with their response. Well, have you taken it to the principal? If you go through those steps, you'll see that because of our great leadership in this district, the issues are resolved before they ever come to the school board. So there's not a line at the podium on Thursday night for the school board meeting. Everyone's welcome. You're welcome to come and speak, absolutely, if you have any concerns that need to be addressed. But we're very fortunate in that, again, top to bottom, our leadership and our educators share our community's values, and we're all doing what is most important, which is what's best for the child. And that is my guiding principle in service to the school board, is what is best for the child. If we can stick to that principle, it's pretty hard to make a mistake.
Like some of the other candidates have shared, there's a reason why my wife and I decided to buy into Branson Public Schools, because they're doing a great job. But without naming and being firm in your stance on certain issues, answering the question, no, has no business being in the school. If our society has already deemed it necessary that there are certain age groups for certain movies, or that certain magazines are behind a barrier, if those are mutually accepted things in society, why in the world would you ever consider letting it be openly available to children, where they'll walk into a library and their parent may or may not know they have that book? Second, would we be open to parents, the primary educator, as I'd already talked about, being a stakeholder and helping review that process alongside of the elected officials? Great idea, because again, it's another mechanism that turns the power back over from a government entity back over to the stakeholders, which is the parent. The parent has the first right, is the premier educator in that home. Yes, we plus up with over 13,000 hours of influence between K through 12 that we use our school board to pick administrators and teachers to execute that curriculum, but we have to be willing to take tough stances. Yes, it is healthy now, but we have to know our operating environment. Sorry to use Army officer lingo, but that is happening, and you have to be willing to come to grips with that, acknowledge it, and be ready to have a thoughtful and strategic plan to address it when it comes knocking on your door.
I think the media tends to focus on a lot of the negative things going on around the country, and I do think there are a lot of small towns like Branson where there's not really that problem. We should be vigilant and make sure that there aren't these kind of books in our schools. I don't think that is really a problem in our schools. And I think I may be a better writer than I am a public speaker. I would advise you to go to my website, which has a link to the Facebook group. My website is christianschoolboard.com, just christianschoolboard.com, and there's a link there to Facebook. And I wrote a very long critique of the 60 Minutes episode, and the 60 Minutes episode is about this very topic. It talks about a group, Moms for Liberty, which is not to be confused with Moms for America. And he's pretty hard on Moms for Liberty, but this group is advocating for, I think they were trying to censor about 90-something books in, I think, it was North Carolina school district, and only 5 of them got removed. And I go through just minute by minute in this episode and just show the kind of the bias in this, and just talk about it. And my stance basically is that if it's like an R-rated movie, we have these ratings for movies, then you shouldn't have your kids, if they're under 18, watching them without some kind of supervision. And also they made a point in the episode about how, we have to ask parents permission to check out the book. But I said, well, that doesn't really matter if you have the book in the library; they can still read it even without checking it out. So it doesn't matter. So I would advise you to read that very long critique I wrote in the 60 Minutes episode on the Facebook group. And but yeah, I think a good guideline is if it has R-rated material that would make a movie R-rated in the book, then it just needs some supervision. And you can have a version where things get cut out. In junior high, we had a permission slip for my 7th grader. They wanted to show, I think, The Patriot, but they had parts of it edited out. And I think because it's an R-rated movie, because of I think violence and other things. But they just edited certain parts of it out, and they showed it because of its historical kind of reenactment. And I thought that was very fair. And even so, they still had the permission slip, even though it was edited. So that's very reasonable, I think.
Thank you very much. Next question for Alderman. Ralph, we will begin with you. Why are there so many hotels, motels, and inns with expired business licenses still operating? Some have been given notices to close, but are still collecting rents. Even after all the tenants moved out, they are re-renting the rooms.
Great question. When I moved here 26 years ago, several years into that, I started seeing, where these longer-term rentals were happening in hotels, and instinctively I knew then that, man, if something's not done to kind of curtail this, it'll be an issue, and here it is many, many years later, and yes, it's an issue. To my surprise, these are some of the things that you kind of don't know what you don't know until you're like kind of behind the curtain a little bit, and to find out that some of our hotels were operating without business licenses for 4 and 5 years, or even more, really kind of upset me. In fact, I went to Cathy and Alex, and I was like, how does this even happen? And really it was, people not willing to stand and be leaders and hold these businesses accountable to code enforcement. And the codes were already there. They just had to be enforced. City staff was basically told prior to this board, maybe don't worry about it so much. We couldn't stand for that. Us as Branson, Missouri, we attract people from all over the country and even around the world. And to not provide a level of safety to our visitors is an injustice. And when this was pointed out to the board, we took action. And that action was, hey, code enforcement. Let's enforce the codes that are already there. And that's what you're seeing happening. You're seeing in the newspaper where big hotels are being shut down. They're not being shut down because somebody's picking on them. They're being shut down because they're non-compliant. We've had to take these actions because They refuse to be compliant. And now they're so far down the road that the cost for them to be compliant, based on what economically they're going through, is almost hard for some of them to even do. So what happens? Some of them are getting torn down. It's unfortunate, but these are conscientious things that business owners should be doing. You should be investing into your business. You should be investing into your property. And for whatever reason, those things weren't done. The action that we took was to ensure that our city was a safe city for people to visit, was a safe city for you to live and work. And the places that you see these things happening to, trust me, they're not safe. And that's life safety issues are the number one thing that we look at. And so all that you see happening is in the forefront because the massive action that we're taking to right all the wrongs. So it's not the city picking on anybody or making it hard to do business or code enforcement trying to flex their muscle. It's just doing the right thing finally. It's this city taking the initiative and taking the stance that we're going to ensure that our visitors and our residents have the safest city to live and work in.
Josh, with all due respect to the person that submitted that question, I just want to make sure that as you read it, that we want to understand that we have embarked upon an initiative. So it's not that we're currently waiting to do something or anything like that. About 2 months ago or so, we embarked upon this initiative to really clean up some of these facilities that were operating without a business license. You know, and it goes further than that. Because if they don't have a business license, that means they're not being inspected. And I've been sent pictures of just dilapidated beyond safety concerns to the point where the buildings are, have some structural integrity concerns themselves. So I think when you talk about this, you also have to look at all sides of it. And some of the sides include the affordable housing discussion. This is another thing we've been embarking on recently. Now, I want to be very clear. I think when we talk about affordable housing, we want to make sure that something actually is affordable, right? $30 a night to stay in an extended stay hotel ends up being around $900 a month. Well, that's to some people who are making the minimum wage, that's the same price that you would pay to go to a regular apartment. So I think we have to look at why these places operate in the first place, and I think you have to say that the free market principles operate two ways. You have to, as a government, get out of the way and allow businesses to thrive, but you also can't prop up failing businesses who are trying to take advantage of loopholes, and maybe in the slow season they're switching to an extended stay hotel and then they're trying to get all their money when it's the tourist season. So I'm very cognizant of that. I'm very cognizant that if there is a place that shuts down, that people are living there. We've worked with the House of Hope Warming Center and some other organizations in town that can help these folks. But in the same way that if a place shuts down, people may be put out, in the same way, if the place burns down or collapses, we would feel just as responsible. And so this is an incredible initiative. It took a lot of chutzpah and a lot of guts to embark upon this, and I'm proud of our city administration for doing this. Things do take time, even though we operate at the speed of business, but I just wanted to kind of clarify when the question was asked that there absolutely is an initiative in place, that we're going to get these things cleaned up, and quite frankly, we're going to make our strip looking a lot better.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a multifaceted issue. First, on just the general issue of forcing these businesses to comply with code, to be safe, to be clean, those types of things, we absolutely have to do that as a city, there's no question. And it's unfortunate that it was let go for so long. I think we clearly have to look at prior administrations and say you were asleep on the switch. You should have been doing this all along. And I applaud the council and the administration for taking this on. I think it's absolutely appropriate step. I also appreciate, as Marshall mentioned, that the city has gone to great lengths to try to work with these hotel owners to bring them into compliance before shutting them down. It's not as if they walk up and say, you're out of here. They've given them plenty of opportunity, plenty of warning, plenty of chances to make things right, and even with all that, they refuse to do it. So clearly they're consciously violating the laws and regulations of Branson and putting people at risk. So I applaud the initiative. I've talked with other hotel owners in the city about this just to get their perspective. And I think there's a general feeling among the hotel owners that are running proper hotels that this is a positive initiative. They see it as necessary so that Branson doesn't get a black eye in the tourism community. And you're starting to see some of this on Facebook. If you pay attention on Facebook, there are people saying they came to Branson, they went to this hotel because it was cheap, and the water wouldn't even work in the hotel. These are our tourists coming in and posting those kind of results. That's the last thing we need as a tourist destination. So I applaud them. The hotel owners agree in general with the people I've talked with that this is the appropriate action. The one thing I have heard, however, from existing hotel owners that are in compliance is that we could do better with our inspection process and timeline for hotels that are trying to comply. I've heard stories of 4 to 5 to 6 months from the time that they ask for the procedure to be initiated for their annual approvals, that it can take that long to get through it. So it's something we've got to work at and get better as a city. And finally, I have to absolutely agree with what Marshall said. Underlying this whole issue is our lack of getting after our housing issues in this city. We are desperately short of housing for the workers that we need to support the businesses that make this city work. If you walk through any retail district, you will find help wanted signs all over the place. That's symptomatic of the fact we do not have enough workers in this city to supply those businesses. We have to take a very serious cut at how we're going to develop housing in this city that our workers can afford so that our city continues to grow and move forward.